want people who are fully developed to mirror me, to embrace me as I embrace them by nature and with love and with kindness. And it's not easy, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
And I think we as women, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I think we as women have to lead that path with each other, because we as women are not always taught that to survive, to surround ourselves with loving, nurturing women. Women can actually, I don't even want to go down that road, but we as women need to make a commitment to actually really surround ourselves with really integral, non-toxic, loving spirited, want to celebrate you, want to see you succeed in all aspects of your life with no agenda, but just from a mere loving space.
Yeah. And I think that that's actually not the norm, which isn't great, but unfortunately, I don't think that's the norm. I will say that as I've gotten older, I've learned to navigate where to find that though. And I think it takes brain power to do that. It takes give and take, trust, but like knowing your surroundings. But I do think it's obtainable, but it's definitely, it is a tricky road. Because you do have to put yourself out there, but understand that, not everyone's going to be on the same thinking plane as you. So, but no, I don't think we're taught that from a young age. If you were, you should feel very fortunate, because I don't think that's the norm. It was not my norm. It really wasn't until in my 30s that I really realized that, and not from like a selfish way, like not in a way that like I didn't want it. It's just that I had never been around that. I didn't realize what creating that kind of space really felt like. And when I started doing that, though, things really started changing for me in the best and most positive ways. So I just think that it's more one of those things you have to be cognizant of and realize, like, is that what the goal you're trying to obtain? Because is this something you've even thought about? Because again, when you're not brought up with that, it's not until you maybe have a conversation like this, or you're listening to a podcast, or, I just think that expanding the brain in general, everyone could do a little bit more of, and then you start to find those niches and those places where you can find that. But it really takes opening your eyes first and then opening your brain so that you can get to that kind of place.
I am really excited. I am all about Women's History Month. I love, love, love women. I love my girlfriends. I love my mom, my grandmothers, my sister. I love celebrating women. I love meeting new women. I love collaborating with women. I love sharing how we are inspired and who we're inspired by. So this episode, I am so excited to introduce Kimberly Padgett. And it's ironic because we did just meet. We just met on a project we were working on. And it's just really funny how life happens and how many things that we had in similar connection, from Pilates to dance, performing, pivoting during the pandemic, and also being Sicilian. But more importantly, I'm so excited to be able to share this time with Kimberly and share who she is, what motivates her, what inspires her, and what you'll find relatable. I look forward to you listening in. Hold your seat. Gather around the campfire. Here we go. Hey, Kimberly.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
Excellent. Oh my God, I love it. In the studio. I love that studio so much.
Thanks. The camera definitely makes it look larger than it is.
Hey, whatever it takes. I'd like the camera to make me look as small and slender as possible.
Yeah, it's so I look at it on the screen and I'm like, that's much bigger than it actually is here in person.
Yeah, but how much, I mean, the joke is how much space do you really need to do what you teach and what you do? And that's a beautiful thing. It's like the perfect amount of space. So before we get much further in, I want to just say thank you so much for accepting being a guest of mine here on my Can't Be Man-Centered podcast. And it's super cool because, as I said in my intro, you know, I love raising women up. I love connecting with women. I love celebrating women. Being Women's History Month, it's a really big deal to me to just shout out, because there's a lot that life will test you with. And so it's really important for us as women, as a tribe, not because we don't love our men and what have you, but to really know how to be a big, open arm. How do we do this together? And you and I have a beautiful, really brief way of connecting. You in my chair, I last minute joining this project. And just through our natural conversation, unprovoked, did we come to realize we had a series of things in common, or passions, that being Pilates and health and fitness wear, and finding out we were both Sicilian, and the pivot through the pandemic. And I said, I'd love to have you as a guest. And you said yes. So this is how we got together. And here we are. So thank you so much for accepting the invitation.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. I mean, I think that having conversations and connecting with people, you maybe meet them in one spot, like we met on a job, and then it just grew pretty quickly from there. So it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Right. Well, and I think it has a lot to say with, and both of us being that we're in these fields that we're constantly shifting our environments. Mm-hmm. You have to remain open, even when there might be moments where you want to just do anything but be open. You want to close up, you want to go into protection mode, because we have a lot of experiences, what I call the toilet paper roll list of life experiences that can really, test you. Yeah. And so, from that point of view, here I was coming in on the very last 3 days of a project. Though I had been asked to be a part of it from the beginning, I had other things going on. So I knew that I was, as you can walk into a new environment where people have already formulated their relationships, or maybe in my case, in a makeup artist position, like people already have their people that they feel comfortable sitting in their chair. So you were just very open. And through that openness, you were able to receive, even though my initial giving was just my love to your face.
Absolutely, yes. Which was more than enough in that moment, because it needed it.
Oh my God.
You needed all your talents.
Well, it was a joy to make you happy. That was one thing, because I think in doing that, you create some sort of immediate, trust is a big word, but immediate sense of feeling safe, feeling heard, feeling the role that you're there to play, feeling like, we've created a partnership.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's so important being in that chair too, because you get it from both sides, from your side and mine, but you know as well as I do that, like, any talent that's going out there, you're already putting yourself in front of a camera. And we'll probably get into this later, but acting is a newer skill for me. I'm predominantly a dancer. So the role I was in was acting. So I needed to feel very comfortable with everything going on outside of my control, because I needed to focus on like what was going on in that moment. And you 100% did that. So thank you.
Well, and then I must say, though, people will have to wait to actually see your performance. I was gobsmacked. Now, initially, we did a little something in between that neither one of us expected.
Yeah.
That again, we won't give away.
Yeah.
And I think they were very happy because those are things that I have a lot of experience doing. Just deliver, get in, get out.
Yeah.
And to then bring you back to where we had started, not knowing what I was preparing you for, but not knowing the power of what you were going to perform. And then you went to perform this unbelievable piece of movement. And I know I was not alone. I'm sure there was, let's say there was about, 70 to 80 of us in that room, 80 or more in that room. I think we were all just like, oh my goodness. It was so ridiculously gorgeous. And I've seen plenty of live theater and performers from very well known to not established. And let me just say, you wooed me from the moment go, but that just took me over the edge.
That's really sweet. The world will get to experience the whole show in itself, but I will say that my partner and I doing that, it was pretty magical, I think, for us as well. We were just like, whoa, what just happened? So, because parts of it were improv, I'd say half of it was improv. So that was just like, whew.
Amazing. Honestly, I had no idea that was improv. The fluidity alone, the connection, the ability to just ebb and flow, mirroring each other. That to me is like, there's certain things in life. It could be like you're meditating on a river, going down a river, and all the perfect balance of nature and everything, the sounds of the nature and what all's there and present, and like how that just rolls. Mm-hmm. This to me was the exact example of that, along with like the perfect surgeon with their team, or the perfect orchestra with all their music and the way they just, play off each other. That was what this was. So the fact that some of that was improvised, now that I'm here, this is the first time I'm hearing this.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Just beyond, like, really, I'm standing, though I'm sitting, like, really unbelievable, girl.
That's sweet.
I love that.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's go back, like, a little early. Let's just kind of start from the beginning. So where were you born and raised?
I was born and raised in Southern Maryland. So if you're familiar with the Washington, D.C. area, our nation's capital. I grew up about 45 minutes southeast of there, near the Chesapeake Bay.
So was family in politics or military or education, any of those things?
So my dad is a self-taught welder mechanic. He owns his own business. He's had it for well over 30 years, probably about how old I am. So over 35 years. He is incredible. He builds tractors and he races them, and he also is a farmer. So I grew up on a farm as well. So we are one of probably the only Black farms left in Southern Maryland as well. So that's a whole different side of me than the performing side. So it's another entity of me. So that is my dad. And then my mom worked for the county government for she just retired, so 40 years, I want to say, maybe 30 years. So she just retired in 2020, and now she's doing all kinds of stuff. She's doing pretty cool stuff. She's taking keyboard lessons, and she volunteers for Meals on Wheels, and she's just being the amazing human that she is. So those are my parents.
So let's just highlight this for a second. Being a Black-owned farm in Maryland, how many generations? We did discuss this, but nobody knows this.
Yeah.
How many generations back does this go?
So my great grandparents, correct? Yes. So the property is now, my dad took over the farm. My grandpa is 92, still living. I talk to him every Sunday. He still lives on the property. And then his grandparents bought that specific property. So it's been in the family now for 3 generations. There's actually it's not on our direct property, but it used to be part of our property. It's a separate part of the family's property, but there's a Civil War era house that is still on that property, which is pretty amazing. And just a little tidbit, which I find exciting. It's actually not our family, but there are grave markers like at the very end of that property from, I want to say this, I really don't want to get this wrong. It's either 16 or 1700s. I used to be terrified to go down there as a kid because it was like a random, just like burial plot, and it used to scare me as a child. So I actually haven't been down there that much. But I want to say it's late 1600s. It's a family. It's like 4 grave markers that are just down there, and they're just on the property. So it gets kept up, like it gets lawn mowed, and they just, are peaceful to themselves. But I always find that really cool because I started doing some history on that family. I won't go into that, but I just find it cool. There's just like another piece of history.
Well, I mean, first off, you're in Maryland, you're on the East Coast, you're above the line of South and North. You're Black family.
Just above.
Exactly, just above.
Yeah.
Just a breath above.
Mm-hmm.
You got generations of like before the turn of the century, like it really is Civil War time.
Yeah, it's pretty, it's really amazing. As growing up as a kid, you don't see that. And then as you grow up, you start to see it more, and then you start to see where we are in the world. And I realize just how fortunate it is that we still own the property and it's still functioning. And hopefully one day, I have 2 siblings. It will keep going and flourish, and we'll carry on. My maiden name is Jones. My last name now is Padgett, but we'll carry on the Jones family and farm and just keep that going. So that's again another whole part of me that I love, and it exists. Not many people get to physically see that because of the nature of my job and what I do outside of that, but it is definitely a big part of me. Yeah.
Well, I mean, again, this is what I love about sitting around and people joining me around this campfire, because how else would you know without, I mean, this is who I've always been, curious by nature. So I love asking questions, not because I'm being, nosy. I really think people are fascinating. This is an extraordinary story that most people, it saddens me. So many inner city kids who can be predominantly minorities never see anything besides cement, never see land, never get to touch their hands in the dirt and grow a plant, let alone have an animal, or camp underneath the stars.
Yeah.
And so to have this family history that you're rooted from, that's your foundation, that you have present day 3 generations, but those generations go back so many generations because of the history of ownership. And post, when exactly did that deed occur? Like Civil War, like there's just, I mean, to have the right to have that land as a Black family, as a Black owner, I mean, that's a story in and of itself that I do not doubt has given you the strength, the integrity, the foundation, the moral value, the forthright, focus to, no matter what you're faced with, your family lineage gave you those roots to soar.
Yeah, I totally believe in that. And it's even more interesting because I believe I have a lot of family history in a book. It's about Calvert County, but I believe that it was also my great grandmother that purchased the land. So it's very interesting because I think parts of it, and I don't want to get anything wrong because things, you hear things through the grapevine sometimes through family, but I believe that she purchased it. And then another portion of the property comes from the grandfather's side. But so the direct part that I think my grandfather lives on, I think my great grandmother actually purchased that, but got conjoined with her husband's part. So it just kind of got like put together. I think it used to be like much bigger than what it is. And then parts of it did get sold off. But it's fairly sizable. I think I was describing to you, it's walking onto that property is literally like a slice of heaven. Like I go there and it's just so pretty. I just want I want to hire a professional painter and just have them sit and just have a huge portrait of it, because it kind of just, when you go in there, you get to kind of go back in time and just kind of, I don't know, it's simple in the way that it's not overbuilt. It does what it needs to do. There's cattle on the land. It's just kind of free. It's just free of the world around you. So it's naturally lined by trees. So you're not seeing other properties around it either.
Yeah.
So it really is a slice of heaven. I love going there.
Well, and the fact that it's on the Chesapeake Bay, on top of which
it's near the Chesapeake Bay.
Near the Chesapeake.
You can't see the bay, but it is near it.
That whole area is pretty magical. So much history.
It's beautiful. There's a lot of history. So if anyone's ever interested in learning about Southern Maryland, there actually is a lot of history, and more so, like you said, we're very close to the Mason-Dixon line. Yeah. So it's a very interesting place to live, because you have a lot of Southern influence, and then you do have a lot of Northern influence. And Southern Maryland is definitely, I would say, can pull more from that Southern influence. So
no doubt.
It's an interesting, and as I grew up, I learned more and more about it. So, and it changes also, obviously it changes through time. So when we moved there, or when I was growing up, the big thing there was like the McDonald's being built. Like, I kid you not, like it was like, that was like the huge thing. Like there was not a lot of cars on the road still. It wasn't super developed. I go back now and I'm like, whoa.
Oh yeah.
Totally
I can imagine.
Different. Totally different. So it's interesting to see how it changes and how it doesn't change. It's interesting.
Well, and it's interesting. I think I told you that I grew up in Northern Illinois, where there was lots of farmland as well, and how it has evolved over the years, gone from spans and spans of farmland to now just being taken over by subdivisions as people would sell off their family plots.
Yeah.
And as we both know, as things have shifted with our food sources, and how certain lobbyists have come in and overtaken, or I don't want to say put the gun to the head, but there's just been a lot of things that I think have been challenging for family-owned businesses. And growing up a third generation family-owned business, there's a lot to be said when you get to actually successfully carry on the legacy of a family-owned business, whether that was your intention or not. But the pride, and if you can, amongst all the things you come up against, that's never ending. I applaud your family, because it takes a great tenacity.
It really does. It really, really does. Like, my dad is like maybe one of the strongest people I think I know. Like he literally carries that farm on his back. He does everything. And helps take care of my grandpa. I think we talked about that. When you love what you do, it is who you are. So it's obviously very hard work for him, but I know that he takes it. It's him. It's his pride. It's, which I'm proud of. Like, I'm extremely proud of, what my dad has accomplished with the farm, and it's pretty impressive. I will say, very impressive.
So impressive, but it also makes sense to, again, who the little bit of time I've had with you, who you stand for. And speaking of which, so you grew up on this farm, you grew up, surrounded by family and this land and what have you. As a little girl, when did you start dreaming about dancing and performing and being an artist? Like, how did that come to you?
Right? How does that connect?
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, it's interesting. I have two other siblings. We grew up on farms, but my mom put us in activities, all three of us, at very young ages, because my mom is not from a farm. She grew up very different than my dad's family. So she was in the Army before she got married. she traveled down, I think, to Georgia and was on the base down there right before she got married. So my mom and my grandparents on my mom's side are actually from Washington, D.C., the city. They moved to small cottages and then started a family. They moved down to Southern Maryland and started a family. So it's very different. So my mom put us in activities as soon as she could, because she wanted us doing stuff. She wanted us to be in activities. So my sister did dancing, my brother did gymnastics, and I did both. So I started dancing and gymnastics pretty much around the same time. And then right around, let's say, like middle school, I kind of dropped the gymnastics because I wanted to be more of the performing. I love dancing. And then I grew up in a competition studio in Southern Maryland and competed competitively and did the studio until 18, until I graduated. And then I went to college and had no clue what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't want to go to school specifically for dancing. I loved doing it, but it hadn't immersed itself, I'd say, into my body the way it is now, and how I connect to it now was very different when I was 18. So I had no clue what I wanted to do when I went to college, which I think is a lot of people. And I auditioned for the dance team and made it there. So the dance team, I'll give them their props. I went to Towson University. Their dance team is it's one of those teams.
Towson, New Mexico.
Towson, in Baltimore. So I stayed in
Baltimore. Forgive me.
No, it's okay. Wow. I didn't realize there was another Towson in New Mexico. So
and how do you spell it? Do you spell it
T-O-W? T-O-W. T-O-W.
That's where hearing it. Yeah, that makes sense. And the dance team and the dance competition studio that you grew up, first off, does that competition studio still exist? Do you know?
Yeah, so my dance teacher's name is Miss Julie. She still owns that studio, still competes. It's still thriving. So she's had that business. So she started that business, I want to say, just a few years before I started there. My sister went there. My sister's 5 years older. So she's had the business for, I think she started it around 20, when she was around 20, maybe a little younger. So she's had the studio for a long time. It's still going. And then, I graduated. I went to Towson and danced on that team for 4 years and competed with them. So it's interesting because my early stages of dancing surrounded around competing. I've always known that I wanted to do more than compete. I'm very competitive, so that actually it goes well with my personality. Like I always say, if I didn't dance, I'd be like a soccer player or volleyball, because I have like a very competitive spirit. So I love gym class because it was my time to like compete, and I could do field hockey and like do sports. I might not have been the best at them, but I mean in PE. In PE, I've never done any type of like sports outside of PE, but I love playing sports. Like if there's a picnic and there's volleyball going on, I'm there.
That's hysterical. I played field hockey through college.
Oh,
shocking!
Wow.
I know, very shocking.
No, I mean that's like field hockey is no joke. Like that's.
I don't think those girls on the offensive side ever expected this defensive end to outrun them. Let's just put it that way. Yeah, no, field hockey was a cool sport, but I like you, I love gymnastics. I did not do gymnastics. That was not my thing. I could coach gymnastics since I was a little kid. Like it was just one of those things. Dance, I loved. Funny enough, I was not raised around dance competition that I was aware of. We performed, we did, we were classically trained, ballet, modern tap, that whole thing. That led me into musical theater. But that was not like, oh, hey, we got this dance competition studio. I think those things, maybe I'm wrong, as I'm open to possibilities. I think dance studios, as dance re-erected itself and became much more in the more recent times, like I'd say 20, 25 years, I'd say 20 years, especially as it's gotten more of this highlight in public, like in the media again, that it's become much more acceptable to be a part of those things. And there's a lot more of that around. I know so many people who are part of dance competition worlds, whether they're owners, leaders, mothers, competitors. And so I think that that's really fascinating that was your foundation. And it's such a great foundation because it really can provide people with such a vibrant future that I don't think people think about, even though dancers are not always like have the longest life of a career. I mean, depending upon which way they go, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, it's definitely different. So when I started competed through college, and it was so interesting because when I got to college, we all came from different backgrounds. So like as far as the type of dancing we did too, some people were contemporary, some like did pom, like some like it's interesting because our levels of dancing and how we danced were very different. But what I loved about college was that we were like a unit. So like we worked so hard together to compete, and team dancing is very different than studio dancing too. It's like you are literally moving as one unit. You can think about it like a cheer squad almost, but not that, a different type of dancing. But we just worked so hard for one competition, you know, in Daytona. That's our NDA is our championship. It's so different than the competing world of a studio because you have competition season. So you're doing like 10 competitions. Whereas this, there's some colleges that you perform for the football team, you perform for the basketball team. Our coach was very adamant on we are here for ourselves. Like we are here to work. Like we would do maybe 1 or 2 football games for fun. And then we would use the basketball games to practice for Daytona for our championship. And then we go and compete. So like literally during practices, our coach, I have to give Tom his credit right now, Coach Tom, he was at Towson, because he would literally pause the screen. Like we'd watch it on a huge projector. Like this is where my I would say my dedication to like perfection came from. He would pause the screen mid-routine and laser point and circle every finger and arm that was out of place.
Genius.
And then we would watch it in slow motion and you would literally keep seeing the same thing. So if you messed up, you'd be watching it for like 60 frames and you just keep watching yourself.
Yeah. God damn that pinky.
Like that's how we trained. And to the outside world, it can sound very crazy, but it made us strong and it made us, we went through it together. And I built my closest friendships from that team because we lived together, we ate together, we danced together, we breathed together. Like I have such a community of friends out of that I would have never experienced else.
I mean, that's seriously amazing and such a gift because a lot of people actually outside of their family units, if unless they're fortunate enough to go to advanced education away from home, they really kind of either go from leaping from that home, if they have a home, a foundation, to the real world with no connection to building community and relationships outside of who they were born into, which really reflects in the world of career and just the world in general and how people carry themselves, communicate. I also think this is why you and I connected so easily, because we both have been raised in environments. I always use the example between summer camp and boarding school. The mission, the statement, the motto at summer camp was learning to live together.
Yeah.
And boarding school, we were raising each other because our parents weren't around. We didn't even know our backstories. We just knew that we were going to be there for 9 months together, consciously or unconsciously. And this is what we're going to do. And I think that learning to compromise, negotiate, highlight one another, learn to serve each other, to to that ultimate goal and to work as a team. Really, I always look at people successfully in sports, and I go, or the military, and I go, man, they were given some of the greatest gifts of training because foundationally they're just carrying a different goal. They're leading in a different way.
Mindset. Absolutely. Yeah, it's the mindset. I mean, so I came from like I said, the competition studio, which we danced in groups. But I would say it wasn't until I got onto the team that I was like, I like being part of a team. I do like being a leader. I like leading a team. I like being part of a team. Like I like listening and being part of it. I like leading it. And I didn't know I was such a leader until I got to college. It wasn't until I got into my zone that I was like, oh, I actually like leading people and giving them my point of view. And I have a point of view. So college really did a lot for me. I will say I came from very, I'd say sheltered to exposed to a lot of different kinds of people, just things. I'm very grateful for the opportunity I got there. And then I did get a degree. So my degree is actually in electronic media and film. I wind up falling into that, which is a glorified way of saying like I did production, kind of videography, editing. It was kind of all tied into kind of one degree. So I fell in love with I love editing. I love editing. Filming I will do. It's not my strong suit, but I think part of who I am shines in my editing. Like I love putting music to movement. Like that to me is it's like a dance. Like it makes sense to me. My husband and I owned a wedding videography company for a very short period of time. We did a few weddings and whatnot. And I really connected to that. I love connecting the music to the like finding those emotional shots and connecting that together. Like I love doing that. Like,
honestly, you're cracking me up because I was a trained photographer. I started very, very, very young as a little girl.
Of course you were.
Yeah, of course. And in camp, in my counselor, I started training in photography as a little girl. The influence was the daughter of the camp owner. She had the same career path that I wanted, which was a medical illustrator. So it was pre-med fine arts. So she really influenced me at the age of 11 and 12. Then I became a counselor. I started teaching photography at that camp as I was getting it in college from the fine arts, the film and photography, the pre-med, all those things.
Now I have to ask. I have to ask a question real quick. Does this camp still exist?
Oh my God. It's in its 7th decade. It's entering. Yeah, it's magical.
Wow.
Magical. Cool. Matter of fact, my very first podcast was with that woman who is now the owner, co-director. Her son of her two sons followed me and my sister to the boarding school we went to. Now co-owns and directs, and it's pretty magical. I mean, you're not even coming from the same parts of the country that these girls are coming from. And thanks to social media and what have you, have been able to stay and reconnect and all the things. But again, I trained little girls with oatmeal boxes, teaching them daguerreotype photography to then understand light and shadow and composition, go into the dark room, and in that dark room, in quotes, a real dark room, learn how to develop. And from there, then took their cameras, whatever they had at the time, their little Kodak Instamatics or, a little bit more advanced. And by the end of the season, of camp season, we would take those photographs and I would take the soundtrack and build a story, a final film, so to speak, to the camp that would create all these emotions. I did it in boarding school as well. I did, and I was thinking about that quite recently, like that really was that is part of my truth, is taking imagery and music. I mean, mean, the funny thing is, even on the show that we met, I was DJing music, but it wasn't my intention. At one point, I made the running joke, "Oh, I was just hired to DJ in here," because I just like people were asking me like, "Who's like is this like some station?" Or and I'd be like, "Just no, this is just my soundtrack. This is just gonna do a blend here."
The soundtrack to my life.
Yeah, pretty much. So getting back to you, so that's amazing. But again, editing, I also was trained in editing. And I always said the beautiful thing I thought about editors, though I don't know that each and every one or any of them think this, is I do think it's a dance, knowing a beat, knowing how to transist out, knowing what point to like go in and get out. I also think your dolly grip. I always said as a potential director, I would actually ask my dolly grips to dance for me to music before I hired them. Even though the DP hires them, I'd want to know how my dolly grips move. Yeah, no different than my Steadicam operators, because they've got to know fluidity. They've got to know how to come in and how to come out and compose a shot all at the same time. That's an art, and a layered art. But that takes a really internal sense of fluidity that you and I both understand. And I rarely have this conversation with anybody. So the fact that, of course, I mean, peel back that layer of that onion, of course, naturally. So I love that resonates with you. So you finished with the dance team. You now have this amazing foundation of knowing how to work together with all different kinds of people, creating success, being able to negotiate, manage, be a team player, being a leader. Then what did you do?
So my senior year of college, I was like, I had fallen in love with my major. Like, I did not set out, like I said, I went to college and I didn't know what I wanted to do because dancing had always been life. So that's the problem when you get immersed in something like that. You're like, oh, what else am I going to do? And to be honest with you, I mean, the internet wasn't what it is even in the early 2000s. Like, no. It still wasn't, and we didn't have shows like So You Think You Could Dance and all this dance around me. And I didn't have a lot of mentors mentoring what I could do in the dance world. So I was like, all right, dance is going to stay with me, but I'm going to maybe start trying to look outside of that for maybe jobs with my actual major. So, but come to, I guess what happened was that my senior year I actually auditioned for the Baltimore Ravens, their cheerleading squad, because I just started dating my now husband, and I was like, oh, I'll stay in the area and I'll have this to do, this fun, way to kind of going and maybe look for jobs within, the production side. So I auditioned for them and made it through the final cuts, and I got cut. So I was like, okay. Then I was like, all right, like that's not going to work. And then a friend of mine that I actually danced with on the dance team was like, why I'm trying out for the New York Knicks, their dance team. And I was like, okay. And she like invited me to go to the audition with her. And I had maybe heard of what the Knicks were, but I'll be honest with you, I don't really follow basketball that much. So like, I knew of them, but like I knew it was in New York. That's about it. So it's so funny though, because she wound up going on a cruise ship with her now husband and she didn't go to the audition. So it's funny. Yeah. So it's funny because I had another friend that was living in New York. She went to college up there and she was going to the audition. So she was like, why don't you just come up and stay with me and go to the audition with me? So that's what I did. And it was a week-long audition for the Knicks. And I had no clue what I was walking into. I had no clue. Like, I didn't realize what the Knicks meant to that city to begin with. I found out real quick, but I didn't know that because I'm not from New York. And then I also didn't realize that their dance team was also like very prominent, like a very like most dancers like aspire, like they know the Knicks dancers, like they it's like a team that a lot of people know about and dancers in the area would love to be a part of. So I found that out real quick when I showed up for the audition, and there was like 1,000 girls that auditioned. It was like their biggest year of audition. So I was 21 coming out of college and going to New York, and I auditioned for this team. It was a week-long audition. They made cuts every day. I had been to New York, but with my dance studio and as a kid. So like I knew of Times Square, and that was literally it. Like we didn't like leave Times Square. So I didn't know how to navigate the city. And I was staying with my friend, and she had gotten cut early on. So she actually wound up going home to Maryland, and I stayed at her place. So I remember going into the train station for the first time and walking in and literally walking out. Like I never even saw a train. I walked in and went, nope, walked out. The auditions were at Radio City, where the Rockets are. And I walked from about, I think her apartment was on like 80 something, and that's on like 30 something. I want to say in the 30s, or I don't remember where
Rockefeller Center.
I walked from her apartment to Rockefeller every day for auditions. I would leave about 2 hours early. And I would walk in the summer, in the heat, audition, and walk back to her apartment. Because I was like, I had no money to take a cab.
Thank God you didn't have thick thighs, because your thighs would have been rubbed raw. That would have been me. Just saying.
Well, I was sweating. I can tell you right now, I was sweating because it was like August or something, and it was so hot in the city. So I was already sweating by the time I got to the auditions, and then I would walk like however far it took home. I will never forget walking to that train station for the first time and going, absolutely not. We're going to walk. So I walked, and the last day of auditions came, and it was interesting because So You Think You Can Dance was like starting to get very, like, it was the beginning of that. So our final audition was at a popular nightclub. They had rented it out for the night, and it was So You Think You Can Dance style. So there was 3 judges on one side. There was 3 judges on the other side. We would come down 2 at a time on these like staircases, and we would dance. And then somebody would give us feedback. Like I remember that the person that gave me feedback, his name was Dan Kennedy. He was a huge choreographer at the time. And I was like, I remember like seeing him, like taking class from him at workshops when I was like 12, and like being like, oh my God, I love you so much. And then in that moment, he was the one judging me. He's like a hip hop dancer, and I'm not. So I remember getting dancing and like waiting for his critique. And his critique to me was something along the lines of, like, you need to be a little more grounded, but great job. And I was like, oh my God, yes. I remember being so relieved because they were giving like real feedback. Like not everyone got great feedback. So I remember like getting that and going back upstairs and then just being in that moment and being like, what is going on right now? Like a week ago, I like started this journey, and right now I'm auditioning in front of a choreographer that I knew as a kid and loved at a nightclub in New York City. And my husband now had taken the bus up to New York, and he was in the audience like watching me. And then they announced the team, and I made it. And that was the next 5 years of life. I was a Knicks City dancer for 5 years and lived in New York. Yeah. It was my first professional job right out of college. And it was the best thing that could have happened to me because I needed it. I had gained some independence in college, but New York was a different level of independence. I don't like asking for help. I was just out of college. I had no money. I moved from apartment to apartment. I had a long distance relationship. Also, and then being on the team, which was a lot. Like we did a lot. I mean, there would be during the season, we'd have 3 games a week, 2 practices, outside promos. I mean, and we would learn routines every week. Sometimes we'd learn a routine, we'd clean it and perform it the same week. So mentally it was draining. Physically it was draining. New York City made me the person, helped shape me into the person I am today. It was, and then being a part of a professional organization too. Yeah. So you're not only a dancer, you're representing a very big entity. That's a big responsibility. I mean, we do media appearances. We would be on television. We went through media training. I learned how to talk to people. Believe it or not, I've become very comfortable talking to people. But growing up, I was an introvert. Like, the person I was in high school is not the person I am now. Like, I was a fly on the wall when I was younger. I would just sit back and observe. That was me. I was very much introverted. I did a lot of activities. So people, I think, thought I was very outgoing.
Yeah.
But I was at nature very much, I'm a fly on the wall. I'm just going to observe. I'm friendly.
I relate to that.
I didn't grow up with that personality. So, like, I even remember at the Knicks audition, they had like a booth. Like, when you got done dancing, you were supposed to go and talk to the camera and like tell them about your experience. And I like skipped it. Like, I straight up just didn't go because I was so nervous to talk to the camera. It wasn't required, but they were having people do that. And I literally did everything I could to avoid that. So throughout the experience of that, like, we did media training every year, like how to handle interviews and things like that. And it really helped because I got used to just talking to people, just carrying on a conversation, which is when you're not born with that, it's a huge deal.
There's an art to it. And it's really funny that you tell me this because, again, in those, like, again, those 3 days that you and I interacted, which was really only 2, and I really only did your makeup the first day. That's the joke. And yet the third of the 3 days was when we had this other pretty deep engagement during this window of time because I had the opportunity to touch you up. Again, lots of stuff was spilling out of both of our mouths very quickly in a very loving, like, wow, light bulb moments. But as I sit here and listen to you, I knew nothing about the New York Knicks period of time. I love that story. I know a lot of women who've been a part of other sports teams, a part of their cheerleading, where they also have these amazing connections, amazing success from that point forward into their present day lives, where they really do know how to, raise each other up. They really know how to work together. And they know it's not about just them. They know that they're representing. And because of it, it shows. Now, and what's so also interesting with what you said about being introverted, you still actually have that very, as we would all have, you still have that very quiet, shy, introverted self. Yeah. That would not be something that if you look down a trailer in a makeup trailer, you to me would not come off as the one that needs to be heard, the one that needs to be seen. You are quiet. You are still quietly that observer. Even though you're integrating, you're interacting, I think you carry yourself with such grace that that's not something that you walked in with, like, the sandwich board or the neon light scrolling up and down going, and these are all of my things that I've done. I just love that about you because it makes you sexier. It makes you more delicious. It makes you more relevant. It makes you just inspiring. It shows the empowerment of just what I call keeping a secret. And it's not a secret in an affair sort of way. I mean, like, the power of that foundation. Like, do you look at a house and go, I know exactly how that house is built? No, you don't. Like, you got to get under it. Like, your foundation is just so, it's just so becoming. It really is so cool. I just love it. So, my God, tell me something about being a part of the Knicks. When you were there for the 5 years, was that a year-round commitment for you? Because that's a seasonal job, technically. So for you, was it around the year commitment?
Yeah, it was. Once I moved up there, I was there. So typically they hold auditions in the summer, and then our rehearsals start at the end of August, beginning of August. It depends on the year. Yeah. And then preseason starts in October. So we're practicing for 3 months before because there's a lot of games in basketball.
Long
we only have
season.
one game, but it's a
Yeah.
long season. So
Yeah.
we already have X amount of dances ready before the
Yeah.
season even starts. So preseason starts in October and then can go until April, May.
Yeah.
And then auditions are usually sometime in the summer. So it is, maybe there's a month grace, 2 months grace time, but there's also promotions going on. Like we do different events throughout the city. So, I mean, fortunately I was in New York City, so there's always something going on. So, that was always great. And then I did what's called the New York Liberty. It's the women's basketball team, which was always so much fun because it was, I mean, I love Dancing with the Knicks, but it's a little more stressful than what I did with the Liberty. So with the Liberty, it was a cheer like dance squad.
Yeah.
And I danced with that. So it was just fun. And that season basically was on like, it crossed over to the men's basketball season, but it was predominantly in the summer. So for 2 summers, I did that. So that made it completely year round. And some of it overlapped if they went into playoffs.
Genius. Did the Knicks play at Madison Square Garden or?
So, yes, the Knicks play at MSG, which is another cool part about that job. I mean, again, I didn't grow up in New York. I have basically never even heard of Madison Square Garden before I auditioned. And then very quickly, though, before auditions were even finished, I mean, for one, my auditions were at Radio City, which was already like, what is it going on right now? Like, we auditioned where they rehearsed. So that was already crazy to me to begin with. Coming from where I come from, small town, that was already crazy. Yeah. And then I don't think I'd ever even been in a basketball arena. So like my first game, I mean, you learn quickly Knicks fans, and that was a very interesting season for the Knicks. There was a lot going on. So people really took to the dancers. That's how I'll put it. People really just took to the dancers that season because that was like the most positive thing going on. So like, but it was packed. I mean, and like knowing what MSG was and the world's most famous arena, like understanding what that meant and going onto that court. I've been very nervous for many things in my life with competing. Yeah. And it was one of those moments that I was like the eyes were like, what is going, like running out onto the court and waving and like waiting for the music to start is kind of one of those feelings that you never forget. Like I might not remember like the moment it happened, but I remember the feeling of it. And it was kind of that moment like, whoa, like I did this. Like it was my first professional job. Like there's thousands of people in the crowd screaming and like we're performing. So like it was kind of
serious sensory overload. That's a little
like you get off and you're like, what just happened? And it was it's also interesting because so the Knicks was kind of similar to my dance team in the way that like we were every dance team I think has its own like way to it. Mm-hmm. We were very like my coach or the manager for our team and for entertainment came from a dance team. Mm-hmm. So not only was she the dance team like overseer, but she was also the entertainment overseer. So she like really took to like clean lines and she understood dance team, which made us just that much more. And amazing. I come from that background. So like when we would go on the court, there was literally cracks on the court and they were named. And we would like have a literal position on the court so that if someone was filming from the side or from the front, our lines were very clean. So, you know, you run out on the court and you go, oh, I'm not only am I dancing, but like, this is also very important. And like our higher ups, like sit high, like higher ups in the company, they sit high. They will give feedback if our lines are like not correct. Like they take note of that. Yeah. So like there's a lot going on in that one.
You're the brand. You are the brand. Yeah, there's no question. And it's so funny because I just the new HBO show that's coming out on the Lakers. I was a part of. So that whole, just, it doesn't matter what, that, because that's your entertainment, but listening to this and being a part of live theater and being a part of, creating these, whether it's live performances with A-listers or just being in these huge arenas with all these live audiences and and the energy that takes course, be it dance shows like a Dancing with the Stars to, big arenas with major performers that I'm aligned with.
Yeah.
Having that sense of being able to show up, you've made a decision, you've shown up, you've gotten the job, you have to bring value day in and day out. You have to have your shit together because you can't, you got to know how to strike your balance. Here you are, a new girl in a new city, in a first professional job, in a big brand with a lot of opinionated people, big personalities, lots of money on the shoulders. And on one hand, we're all these like little intricate bits of the energy that source this whole big little planet, so to speak.
Yeah.
But it's all plays an importance because it's like a domino effect. It's like a rock in the water effect. And your part has an effect on the next woman or the owner or the player or the people who are buying the tickets. It all just plays off of each other in this very world-renowned famous arena. I just think that's brilliant.
Yeah,
I absolutely love that.
Thank you. Yeah, it really was an amazing experience. I mean, MSG had a whole makeover, I think the year I stopped. But I don't know what the hallways look like anymore, but there's a kind of tunnel and hallway area before you go out, and there's pictures on the wall back there, if you've been back there, of all this is like what really, I think this was part of my first game experience, that I was back there and you see all the people, like the Billy Joel, and you see all the people on the wall that have performed there, and then like the big game, like the one thing that's burned into my brain, I feel like it's so random, but I couldn't tell you the two teams that were playing, but it was, I think, a March Madness. I think it was like a tournament game, and you see the two guys jumping up for the tip off, and you see they're in like triple overtime, like you can see it in the picture, and you just like that picture for some reason forever is burned in my brain. I don't know. It was a huge game, obviously. I couldn't tell you the teams, but I remember like every game I just stare at that picture because you could, and then the crowd is like cheering. You can just feel the energy in the picture. Yeah. It's just such a pic. I hope it's still there. But it's just such a cool picture. But yeah, you get to see all the people that perform there. And so yeah, my years on the Knicks were pretty amazing. They were amazing in one of I'd say the hardest mentally. I was in a fight. My husband now, we started dating in college and we did long distance for 5 years. So on one hand, it was like the most amazing experience. It was great. And then there was a whole flip side of that I had no family there. I was by myself. I had made friends, and I have good friends still from the team, but it's very different when you are in a city like that and you have a family, and a long distance relationship that I wanted to make work. So there's that whole other half of me that existed that definitely was challenging.
Oh, and that's, I think, an interesting thing to highlight, because when you're in these very public, famous, successful arenas that people look to, so you come from this farm in Southern Maryland, or I come from, Northern Illinois, Southern Wisconsin, like, plucked out of the cornfields, basically. I mean, associated with Chicago, but, and then you make it, or you successfully keep showing up and getting these impressive opportunities. And then people who see from the outside, not even so much what maybe you and I are doing, but just the whole big thing.
Yeah.
And what they don't realize is that as fortunate as we are to have these opportunities, and maybe we didn't see this coming on our path of the big, goal of like, how do we paint this picture of life for ourselves? Not all of it is easy. Not all of it is without its challenges. Not all of it isn't without its loneliness or sense of who can I trust?
Yeah.
Or, is this where I'm supposed to be? And what am I giving up to get? Or, because people want to just immortalize it and glamorize it, but they don't realize. And I just had this actually happen, funny enough, one in another interview with somebody I was interviewing, saying exactly that for this major production, this major celebrity they were aligned with. Their personal experience was one of their worst experiences ever. But are you going to see that on the camera? No. I also, on social media, had somebody call out how I had been a part of a project that somebody just fell madly in love with. There are huge followers all over the world on this project. My experience turned very sour by the end. Not because you're like looking, it's just like, so people don't understand that. Yes, I'm happy that people loved it. I'm happy that people were entertained by it. I'm happy that people were successful. And I'm happy that I had the opportunity. But man, you don't sign up for like all the in between the creases of like what the full picture and the story tells. And you're not there to be the whistleblower. You're just say, no, but on the other side of that light can be the darkness.
Yeah. Because I mean, at the end of the day, you're still living life. I mean,
Correct.
there's life outside of what you're doing. So, and I think and I think you're similar to me. So for me, it was always like, this was my decision. Like, I don't have to be up here.
Yeah.
And have no family around and be doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So, and I say that in a way of in my brain, and I still think this way, but it has shifted throughout the years and life experience. But I don't want to bring somebody else down.
No.
Because of a decision I made. So, and what I mean by that is it was my choice to move up to the most expensive place, basically almost in the United States. Like, I'm not going to ask my parents and ask people for money to support me. Like, this was my decision. So I'm going to support myself. And there were times I asked for help, but those were like, I was like, maybe not going to have somewhere to live kind of help. So I did drop the pride a little bit, but for me, it's like, this was my first big thing on my own. Like, this was my choice. Like, I'm not going to ask somebody else to have to get overly involved and be complaining about it to someone else, because it's my choice. Like, I made a decision at the end of the day,
And this is part of growing up. And I think that, like, I've said that college to me, and then I think our earlier, like post-college days, if you've gone to college, is this period of time where you're laying the foundation. And it's not because we haven't learned it before, but I think it really becomes like a consciousness or unconsciousness where you're really learning about setting goals and solving problems. Life is about a series of figuring out, how do you get through, how do you complete, how do you make it happen? How do you resolve that issue? That's what you're talking about, is how did you, you made a decision, nobody else made that decision. Here you are, now how are you going to get it figured out? And I know that firsthand. I mean, in LA, there was some pretty, well, in Chicago too, but there definitely been some moments where it was like, it was nobody's problem but my own. And no, it was not about trying to bring other people down. I might open up about things, but it was not about making it somebody else's problem. And trust me, plenty of people don't want that problem. And plenty of people walked away. And they also showed who they were too. It wasn't about that I was asking them for anything, but maybe just to sit and just be a warm body, not in an intimate way, just like know that your friendship really mattered. So that's also been like, in your figuring out, you get to see who people really are in their character as well, besides who your character is. That I think is a real reveal that people don't really talk about, but it's not a negative thing. It's a growing up thing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Not negative at all. Now, as I've gotten older, I've been able to sort that out in my brain a little bit better. I mean, New York was so chaotic for me that it was like, on one hand, like I loved what I was doing, but outside of like the dancing and being at rehearsals was like my safe zone. Like, even like going to games, like we would get meals, like I would know where my dinners from that night. Like, I was so comfortable there. Outside of it was pretty chaotic. Again, like I was managing a long distance relationship that was hard. We didn't have a lot of money. We took the bus. I see my now husband once every month or two. We were visiting each other. So that part was really stressful. He was early in his career. So he wanted to live in New York City. That had been a dream of his, but he was early in his career and he was applying for jobs and not getting them. I want to say my 4th year on the team, he had applied for a job and made it to the last 2 people. It was going back and forth in the interview. So at this point, we had done 4 years long distance, which was chaotic. And we had gotten this close to actually being together and having that normalcy of, and then he didn't get the job. And that was a huge turning point for me. That like destroyed me pretty hard. It was interesting because one of my friends was getting married that year, and the morning of her wedding, I found out he didn't get the job. Like literally, we were like heading to the wedding, and he got in the phone call that he didn't get the job. And another one of my friends, it was a college friend. We were going together, and my husband was there, and he told me, and I like went into like a depression in that moment. And then my other friend that was driving us was like, "You need to get it together for so and so," and I said, "Okay." And I literally flopped my brain like that, threw it in the back of my brain, and had a great time at the wedding.
Great life lesson. Great life lesson, and a great friend who snapped you out of it. Because not everybody cares enough to say, I not only love and care about you, I care about this person, and we gotta make this. We gotta get it together for her. You can be depressed, cry later. Feel your feelings later. But that is such a huge, and that speaks volume, because not everybody has that support system in the right place at the right time. Trust me, I know. And it's so interesting that we're talking about in its own word without using the word struggle, because I had that on my next question was, what have been your struggles? That, early on in a career, like an artist's career, an artist's path, there are no guarantees. Not that there's any guarantees for a teacher or a lawyer or a stockbroker or an agent or, but the road less traveled, i.e. the artist's way, is throw that thing out there and let's see how it sticks, and how many times you got to throw it to get any kind of like, and even that doesn't guarantee anything. I always said I probably rubbed 2 sticks together for the first 15 years of my career. The talent was there. The opportunities came and went, but I was up against, as we both know, this is a very competitive business. The competitiveness never ends. People are very hungry. People will do whatever they can. Some earn it because they know people. Some earn it because of how they look. Some earn it because they're in the right place at the right time and it's luck. Some earn it because they're truly gifted and should earn it. But as you know, there's a lot of scenarios that come into all that play. And then you talk about your now husband. I know that my first marriage did not succeed for the mere fact that just there was so much emotional struggle with success, and success, whether it happened or didn't happen in our careers. And
Yeah.
that was a hard one to carry and take responsibility for not only myself, but somebody else.
Yeah, I feel you on that. We celebrate 11 years in June, and when I say that to people, well, I get two responses. They're like, "You don't look old enough to be married for 11 years." I'm like, "Thank you, thank you. I appreciate that."
And
But
it's
the other
awesome,
part
by
is,
the way.
what was that?
It's awesome that you guys have 11 years of marriage together. That
Oh,
says a lot.
yeah. I mean, again, there's been a lot of struggle, but the other part of it is they're like, how? It's like a how question mark. And it's one of those things where I look back on the earlier stages and even now, but so I was a person like my dad who's very like focused. Like my brother's the same way. He's an engineer, he's a professor at Iowa State. We're very like, we do the things we love and we're very focused on them. So that's my natural personality. That's my natural tendency. And then I met Robbie, that's my husband, and I met him my senior year of college. And it was very kind of unexpected. Like I met him my last semester and fell very quickly for him. Like I didn't date a lot in college, like very little, and I had no boyfriends in high school. So, like I said, I was very focused on me and what I was doing, and I loved what I was doing. So Robbie kind of came out of nowhere, and in a way of like, I told him and many people, like I knew I wanted to marry him within 2 weeks. Like I was like, I'm going to marry him. I knew I was going to marry him very early on. Like I felt so comfortable with him early on. It was just like I'd known him forever. So, and it was interesting because, and then I got this job with the Knicks and I moved to New York, and without hesitation, I took that job. Like, he was not even considered in the way of it wasn't a consideration. Like, how are we going to make this work? Like, there was no conversation. Like, he went up, watched me audition. I got the job, and then life started happening. So for me, it was like, even at that point, it was still like my career first, my relationship second. And I'd say about 3 years into the Knicks, my husband has all the patience in the world. Like this would not have worked if he was not who he is.
Yeah.
Because he's an easygoing person. He supported, the situation. Now he is needier in the way of I am, as in like he's used to having like a lot of family nearby. Like I have a small family, he has a big family. They're used to being like huggy, and that's not me. So like I could live without that because I didn't grow up with that, but he was different than me in that capacity. So I'd say like 3 years in is when I started noticing that like there was a need outside of myself. And he's not one to speak up, but that started becoming more of a common theme. So, which was fine. It opened me up more. I will say that we got married my 4th year on the team. I thought I was leaving the team my 4th year. I realized I wasn't done yet. So our first year of marriage was actually long distance too.
Did you have to audition every year? I'm sorry, did you have to audition? You did, yeah.
I did have to re-audition every year. And my 5th year on the team, which was my last, I was also a team captain. So I had more responsibilities. And I'd also just gotten married. So my 5th year on the team was crazy. That's the only way I could put it. It was mentally crazy and emotionally crazy. Like things I didn't realize I was going to be so passionate about, like my first Christmas with him. I didn't realize it until it was coming. And we have a game on Christmas Day every year.
Oh yeah. And
there was a chance that I wasn't going to get off. And that like literally gave me like it was physically making me ill. Yeah. Stressing about the job and being married. Yeah. it was becoming a huge problem. But I will say, fortunately, my 5th year on the team happened, and naturally, without even being married, it was time for me to move on with life. So I will say that timing, thank goodness, worked out how it should have. It was just time for me. I love the team, but it was time for me to just kind of move on. So when you bring up struggle, yeah, it was a struggle. I mean, 5 years long distance. So when you add the long distance, I got married, moved home to Southern Maryland, and then I was married from dating long distance for 5 years. So I had, decided to leave New York and the Knicks, come home to Southern Maryland, and be married. So my next 2 years, without a doubt, were probably the hardest years.
That was such a fun first hour with Kimberly Padgett, and I cannot wait for you to join us for next week's part 2 of this continued conversation about the journey of this dancer and her stories that lead her to her now current journey with performing and Pilates. Thank you so much for joining me around the campfire this week, and I look forward to you coming back next week. Bye for now. Much love.
So I came from, like I said, the competition studio, which we danced in groups. But I would say it wasn't until I got onto the team that I was like, I like being part of a team. I do like being a leader. I like leading a team. I like being part of a team. Like, I like listening and being part of it. I like leading it. And I didn't know I was such a leader until I got to college. It wasn't until I got into my zone that I was like, oh, I actually like leading people and giving them my point of view. And I have a point of view. So college really did a lot for me. I will say I came from very, I'd say, sheltered to exposed to a lot of different kinds of people, just things. I'm very grateful for the opportunity I got there. And then I did get a degree. So my degree is actually in electronic media and film. I wind up falling into that, which is a glorified way of saying, like, I did production, kind of videography, editing. It was kind of all tied into kind of one degree. So I fell in love with, I love editing. I love editing. Filming I will do. It's not my strong suit, but I think part of who I am shines in my editing. Like, I love putting music to movement. Like, that to me is, it's like a dance. Like, it makes sense to me.
I am so excited for you to join me, part 2 with Kimberly Padgett, where we discuss so many cool things about being who she is and her journey from her foundation and her family's farm to the New York Knicks to discovering how Pilates is a passion, a love, and how the movement of body is something she wants to share with many, many people. So I look forward to you joining us, where we sit down and have this really great discussion about so many things about life. And lean in, pull up a chair, join us around the campfire. Here we go. Well, that's really funny, because my next question was about pivots.
Yeah.
So that was a big, huge pivot, going from like this simulated 5 years of all the things you were figuring out and balancing and shifting with, and now all of a sudden you took this big like exit left.
And like that, because it's not like a job where you give your 2 weeks. It was more like the Knicks season ended. Like we didn't know if they were going to the playoffs. I never even knew when my last game was going to be.
Sure.
So, and they were in playoff contention. So every game was like, this is potentially the last of my career. Yeah. Literally, when they lost that last game, I literally packed my stuff up, got on the train or the bus, I don't even remember, and went home. And that was literally it. So, and then like moved home and then had, you know, it was nice to be home for the first couple months because it was like, like I could breathe.
Yeah.
But then it started sinking in that it was like, what am I going to do? Like literally, and I went in, I would say I never knew like what depression felt like before then. I had been stressed, but not depressed. But I would say I went into a depression for like, you wouldn't have known it really from the outside. And it took kind of looking back on that time to know what that was. Yeah. But I definitely went into a depression for, I'd say, a solid year. And it was crazy because I was like so happy to be with my husband. Like I loved him. I was happy to be with him and be able to see him every day. But there was a huge part of me that literally just got ripped out of me. So that was interest. That was just an interesting part of life. Yeah.
Well, and also because, you know, when you're identified with this self-expression, dance, being associated with these teams, being associated with like, this has been your path up to this point.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's kind of like the left foot just got, you know, removed from the situation. And how do you prepare for that? You don't. Yeah. There is no preparing for that. There is just and here it is.
There is no handbook. There is no, and to be honest with you, there was no one I knew that had any even touch of what I was going through either. Like there was literally no one I knew that had ever gone through what I went through. So I felt very isolated, and it was isolated in the way of like, it's not like I had a problem, so I didn't know how to communicate that with someone. It's just that I had no one to relate to. I had no one to talk to about it because there literally was no one that I knew that had been through what I went through. So I just kind of sat in that and just, I needed to go through that. And I was very angry at times, and I resented my husband at times. It was not his fault, but I was very angry with him at times. And that was hard for me because I was not angry at him, but I was just angry in general. And I projected that onto him a lot. Like I said, if it wasn't for his personality, we probably maybe wouldn't still be together. Because I was definitely not myself. Like I wasn't myself.
Well, it's also, you know, unconsciously, it's like you're mourning a part of you that you don't even know you're mourning. Yeah. And because you don't want to think of yourself as being identified by this, but it is a part of how your soul ticks and vibrates. Yeah. And even if you were complete with being with that versus complete with being other things or things that led into that stage of your life and that amazing opportunity, so to speak, and good on you for taking that opportunity. I mean, yeah, I get some people would have said, oh no, I'm getting married instead of doing this and put that first, and then never live into that. And we'll never know what that experience is going to be, and would always live in the past of that regret potentially. You got to complete that. And yes, I do not think for any one of us, though people might be like, oh, really? So you're going to get depressed after you just spent 5 years on the Knicks, you know, with the Knicks? Yeah. Yeah, because guess what? Yeah. There are these highs and then there's these lows and there's these quiet moments that you have to be self-reflective. And some of them are forced upon us. And some of it is just transition into your new beginning. And you can't, there's no roadmap for that. And there is no, who do you talk to about that? There's a therapist doesn't even know how to navigate that.
Yeah.
That's just life navigating life. And you're lucky if you have in your life souls that can, from a closeness or a distance or just in an energetic sphere, support your process.
Yeah.
And get to that other side, whatever that means. And hopefully that doesn't go down a dark rabbit hole where many people do go, which is through addictions and self-destruction. This is just a letting go process. And I know this myself firsthand after, being an associate, getting a career off the ground that, is not being also served by parents who can just keep giving you cash. No, this is like, you're out on your own. There is no money. You figure it out. Those words weren't even said. It just was and is. You go to school.
It's a no.
It's a known fact. You get a higher education, you're going to figure out how to pay for it. Even if you're deeply in debt, you're never coming back home. It's not that we don't want you home. That's not how we raised you. We raised you to be a fully self-serving adult. You go out, you figure it out. You figure out your roof over your head, your clothes on your back, your food on your table, and what you do for a life. And there's no like adventure in the picture. It's like, again, you better hope whatever you go for sticks. And it's interesting that and I really do appreciate your willingness to share that, because I don't think a lot of people understand that as one is going through life as an artist, a performing artist, trying to find their next role, find their next position, find their next chapter in this, ever unfolding journey of this like mural painting, so to speak. Because you don't know, I mean, you might know where you're going from here, but you might not. And I think it's interesting for myself. I know that I've been around a lot of artists or peers who are like, if they don't know exactly where they're going from here to here to here to here to here, it's kind of like, well, what's your problem?
Yeah.
There's no time for self-reflection. There's no time for self-development. There's no time for breathing. A lot of judgment, a lot of judgment.
Yeah.
And not a whole lot of, oh my God, that's fantastic. Good for you. You're taking a moment just to like, there must be something wrong. No, there has to be nothing wrong. But you're still gonna go, it's enough for the individual to go, Jesus, am I gonna work again?
Yeah. And yes. And I think the things that helped contribute to my saneness, I will say, is that I'm not a money driven person. So like, I always like to say my husband does make more money than I do because my jobs are all over the place, but I would be living the same type of life, I would say, if I wasn't married. Like, I'm fine. Like when I lived in New York City, did I want to be shoveling around from apartment to apartment and staying on an air mattress? No. However, I was very happy though with my job and what I was doing. And what I mean by that is, yes, I'd like to make more money so I can live a little more comfortably, but I'm just fine as long as I'm doing what thrives me. It's when I'm not doing because I've tried doing things that, not that I necessarily hate, they just serve no purpose to me really. And I'm not myself. I'm not me. So I will say that, so I came home from New York and I kind of went into that depression. And I think I needed to go through that. My husband was there for me the best he could be. But I think the time I lived in helped me out with that. And what I mean by that is, again, so I lived in New York City. I don't even think I had Wi-Fi. I mean, iPhones I didn't get until after I moved out of New York. I mean, I think I had a BlackBerry my last year on the team.
So what year
I
was the
never
last year
had
of your team? Well, I'm sorry.
2012 was my last year. So I started in 2007.
Okay.
So like
and iPhones came out in like 2008, 9.
Yeah, so I didn't get one till after I was off the team. Social media still wasn't, like, Instagram wasn't around. We weren't even allowed to share like stuff from the Knicks on our personal sites. So like I don't even think I didn't get a laptop till like my last year on the team. Like I didn't really even have access to internet, which sounds so crazy now. But so like I didn't even know what opportunities I was missing, if that makes sense. So when I went home to Southern Maryland, it was more like I had known that opportunity had stopped, but I didn't know what other opportunities were out there. So once I kind of got out of my funk, I will say, and I went out of that for several years, I just started looking for stuff in the area. I went, well, what can I do here? You know, like we're building our relationship and that's in the early stages. We started really enjoying that. And what can I do here? So that's when the fitness part of me started. And I did random dance jobs throughout DC and met people through that. You know, it was so interesting because when I came home, it was like, I look back on that time and the state my mind was in was one way. But when I look back on that, it was the best thing that could have happened to me. I came home, I started taking my grandfather to appointments. I developed a relationship with him that I would not trade for the world. Like I was literally like doing nothing for months. So I literally would pick him up. I take my schedule was his schedule. I take him to school, I take him to his doctor's appointments. And now like 8 years later, we still are talking on the phone every Sunday. Like I didn't have a super close relationship with him prior to that. And now he's, you know, such a huge part of me. So yes, it was hard, but I don't know if I'm a firm believer of everything happens for a reason. I think part of me is there's, you know, I my brain can go in so many different directions, but that was what was needed. I just didn't know it. And I
think that comes, I do think that comes with reflection and perspective. I don't think that I do agree with you. I don't know that everything happens for a reason. I do believe in synchronicities. I do believe in, you know, if you put it out there, you have the power to manifest it, good, bad, or otherwise. I do believe that, you know, I'd like to believe that, you know, souls are meant to find each other. I do think like this is a perfect example of a gift of you and I connecting. I think this is the greatest gift that came out of me being there for the 3 days, truthfully. I mean, I'm thankful to the you know, the people I was working with in the trailer. They were amazing. But you yourself, that was the greatest gift because of this connection, because of this authentic conversation. I mean, you and I come from 2 different generations, but our stories are actually very, very similar. And it goes to show that it doesn't matter what stage of life you're in. It doesn't matter what your path is, that we are connected at the most deepest rooted soul, like in the earth. And if we pay attention, we can actually see how connected we are versus how disconnected we are. And of course, being in a time of the world where disconnect, lack of trust, divisiveness, all these things that are happening and have been happening energetically, this is exactly why, for me, this platform has been so important. Communication, connection, what brings it, how can we as adults highlight, you know, how we can together change the world, how we can inspire and empower by sharing our stories so other people can hear that if they too are struggling, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, that there are ways to continuously recreate and keep going. You got to pull yourself up and keep forging ahead. And no, it's not easy. Nobody hands it to you. Yeah. I don't know who told you life was fair, but this is life. Life has a series of great opportunities and has a series of pivots. And it's how you choose consciously to pivot in those moments. And you got to feel your feelings.
Yeah. And I have to touch base on that, because so I think back to the days of when I was in New York and my life was crazy and I could barely keep myself together. Yeah. I remember seeing other girls on the team and they would talk to the staff and, you know, they would have conversations and how light they were. And I always remember thinking, like, I wish I could do that. I was not in a state of mind that allowed me to open myself up to anything other than the job. And now I look at my life now and I go, how thankful I am that I went through the garbage and the dirt and the things that I've been through, because I'm in a state now where I'm in a brain space where if we would have met in New York, we would not have this conversation, because I wouldn't have been able to give that much to you. But on that job and that this time of my life, I'm in a place where I'm comfortable and, you know, things aren't super chaotic. There's a lot of chaos, but I'm in a place personally where I'm able to sit down and go, oh, let me talk to her. You know, let's have a conversation. I'm in a lighter place where I'm able to do that. And I think people need to give themselves some grace when it comes to that, because just because you're, you know, not the chattiest person on the job or the most personable, just going in and being a decent person means a lot, because I was still a decent person on those jobs and when I was in New York. But I wasn't in a space where I could give and have conversations like I do now. So my point of that is like, I'm very thankful for the fact that life has, you know, evolved in a way for me where like I can step back and enjoy outside of the main reason that I'm there and be able to connect with people like you. I hope that everyone gets that type of opportunity and maybe can think about that and go, I might not be able to do it now, but maybe I can do that later.
Well, and I think that that's why starting at the beginning of our conversation, remaining open to what opportunities are out there, because you never know whether it's a conversation with a person or just looking up from looking down. I mean, maybe you'll just be stimulated by taking a photograph, or maybe you'll be stimulated by the music that you do hear, or maybe you'll be stimulated by the animal you see walking down the street, or and how you want to, you know, now volunteer your time, or whatever that path is, or maybe it's just you need to get into nature. I mean, everybody is different. You know, today I got into a pool. I have not been in a pool for so very long. And I ran waterfronts. I ran indoor pools. I led water aerobics in the 80s in college. Now that shit did not exist. I was making this stuff up. To be in this pool and be the dancer and be the Pilates person and to be the person. And yet my body is, you know, definitely not in its ideal like shape or form. You can see that I've got it in me, but you're like, what has girlfriend been doing?
Hold on. I wish there was a photograph, and if there is, please send it to me, of you teaching aquatic fitness in the 80s, because that is a picture that I would love to see.
I don't think that there is a photograph. I have to say, sadly, I do think there's photographs of me during that period in swimsuits running waterfronts or being a part of waterfronts. I could send you those. But it made me feel so peaceful being in that body of water, even while there were other people around me that I thought, oh, I wouldn't right now be good with that. But it was just about coming back to your truth, your peace, your whatever. And, you know, it's interesting. So you took this shift when you went home, you started to tap into like things that, whether you saw it coming or not, created your future, which is leading up to what you're basically doing now, in addition to performing, which is your Pilates, right? And just teaching physical health. And you tell me what's you define what it is you do.
Yeah, so I'll do the build up,
please,
more quickly. So yeah, when I went home, I think like the second year I went home, so my husband and I were staying. My mom has like a house that she grew up in and she redid, and she wound up getting remarried and she lives somewhere else. So she rents out that house. So she allowed us to stay there like rent free. So we were able to save some money because we had just gotten married. And so that house is right on the Chesapeake Bay. It's like a little beach town. So we stayed there for about a year, and it's a very small little town. So like, I really wasn't doing much of anything. So I literally, Zumba was big at the time, and I went to like a 2-day Zumba training. And I was like, all right, I'm not going to do that, but like, let me take like the structure and create my own dances. So I literally made my own dance fitness class, called it Zumba by the Bay. There was a beautiful like octagon shape literally over on the beach. And I went to the town, I got the permit and started my own class in the summer. And it was called Zumba by the Bay, and people came and I taught my dance fitness class, and I did that for 2 summers. Robbie, my husband, Robbie, he loves the DJ. So he got like this cheap DJ equipment, and we bought this cheap speakers, and he'd be out there and he'd be doing the music for me. And it was right along the water. I'll have to send you a photo. And people from the town would just come and take class. And I did that.
Love that like so much. I love that so much.
Like, I didn't make a lot of money doing it, but like I charged like $5 a head. But I loved doing it. Like, it was cool. Like, it was beautiful outside, and like people were moving, and I would get like 10 to 15 people at times to come and take class. And it was great. And people really took to it. And that was the first time I had done something like outside of like myself. So that was the first time I connected to, oh, like something I'm doing is directly, like physically making someone like happy, and they enjoy doing it. So that lasted for like 2 years. And then I realized I didn't really like teaching dance fitness though. So as much as I loved that part of it, it was new and it was fun. Dance fitness wasn't my calling, I'd say. So I found bar and auditioned for that and just started teaching it. Like, I went through the training and I just started teaching it. So I actually taught bar for 5 years, and I went from teaching in Maryland to teaching in Virginia. And then we moved to Los Angeles back in 2016, taught bar here. And then I tore something in my hip and had to get hip surgery in 2019. So that was tough. But I rehabbed, and through my rehab, I found Pilates. So I started learning about Pilates. I was ready to transition out of bar, mainly for the fact that I just wanted to go deeper. I didn't need the musical connection anymore, which I love, and I think that is great. But I wanted to concentrate on more body and learn more about body and how the muscles work. My logical side, I'm very much like a seeker of information. So once I started learning that these moves in the bar world come from somewhere, they're derived from Pilates. I started beeline towards that, because by the end of it, I was like basically making up like my own stuff and starting to learn more. So a month before my hip surgery, I took a mat certificate course to see if that's something that to see if what was out there translated to what I knew it was, like to see if I actually liked it. And I loved it. So 2 months before my hip surgery, I took this mat course, got the certificate, had my surgery. had many problems with my insurance through physical therapy. My insurance cut me off about 12 visits into my PT. And if you know anything about hip surgery, it's a lot more than that. So I started my certification for Pilates while I was recovering from hip surgery. 6 months post-surgery, I started my certification, and it was the best thing I could have did. Not only did it make me empathetic, but it helped me. Like, I knew how much it helped me. It made me empathetic to people that have injuries, because I had never had a major surgery like that. I had knee surgery while I was on the Knicks. But I was so young that I recovered pretty quickly. Like, I never missed life because of it. Like, it's like I had the surgery and I kept going, and then that was it. This took me out. Like, this was like a different mindset. So it made me empathetic, but I fell in love with it. Like, I fell in love with how I can translate it to so many different bodies. Like how one thing can be translated to so many different people. So I took to that well. That was 2019. COVID hit in 2020. I was about 4 months into my training for that certification. I had just gotten done the in-person trainings and it's a 500-hour program. So started my own personal like teaching and getting my hours in, and then COVID hit. So I had to get very inventive and finding ways to train on the equipment, teach people. So I went virtually and started teaching mat classes virtually. At first, it was to help get my hours. Because it was the only way. But then it quickly transitioned to, I love teaching mat classes. Like, I loved being able to just hop on, and we don't need any equipment. You just need yourself. And really found a passion for teaching mat classes. And I got my certification at the end of October of 2021. And here we are. I have opportunities that are starting to come my way that I'm really thankful for within Pilates. And I'm still navigating exactly what I want to do with Pilates. I think this is going to be a long journey for me. Sure. But I do know that I love teaching one-on-one sessions. I like that connection. Yeah. I more love connecting with groups. I think that makes sense for me anyways, just because of my background. Mm-hmm. And I love just teaching it in a way that's like obtainable for the general audience. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I love teaching like an intermediate class with people that, know what's going on and have that foundation and feel safe doing it. But mm-hmm. I do love teaching very basic movement, but in a way that makes it attainable to the general population. I'd say a lot of my clients are in their mid 50s. That's what I'm used to working with. I've really grown to love Pilates. It's the first thing that I've done outside of dancing that I love. I'm just going to turn my light up a little bit because it's getting a little dark here. Please. It's the first thing that I did outside of like myself that I really took to. Like I said, the Zumba class was fun, but I quickly realized that I needed to go a different path. And then bar was great, but I quickly realized that I needed to go a different path. And then Pilates just changed. It blew my mind. It changed my life in the way that like I can continue being a student and educate myself. Whereas a couple of the other modalities, I hit that ceiling where I was like, I'm not learning anything anymore. Yeah. Am I entertaining in a way? Yes, but I'm not learning anything else. And that became a problem for me. Yeah. With Pilates, I've realized that now I will continuously keep learning about the body, so I can continuously keep feeding that and continuously keep teaching different people so I can learn different ways. It just made sense to me, and it will be with me through the duration. I don't know exactly what it will always look like, but it will be there. And I'm very thankful I found it, because we were meant to find each other. Right.
Well, and it makes so much sense. So again, which you and I both have shared, I think we've shared, it's really interesting listening to your course of action from like 2012 coming forward, because it was 2012 coming forward that I don't think maybe I didn't tell you this. I had been diagnosed with thyroid cancer. Didn't know it was cancer. I knew I had to have my thyroid taken out. It was after I came out of my surgery that I found out I was declared with papillary thyroid cancer. And from that came through that in the meantime, I had been in really great shape because I was doing Pilates, boxing, and bar work. And I was doing a movement that's flagshipped here in LA that's gone around the world called Pilaxing. And I got certified, right? So I'm really, been very close with Vivica and Courtney, like all these.
Courtney, yeah.
I mean, live down the street. I mean, this is
That's
classic.
Like
I'm
oh my God.
Studios. This is crazy. I didn't even know you knew these guys. Okay, so
I know Courtney. She would take bar classes from me. I know Courtney. Yeah, she's sweet.
Well, so when I first landed at this place, it was 2010, 11 when I started working with them, and I would cry because it was all the things that I love so much. I've been trained boxer. I had been a trained dancer. I love Pilates. I saw how all of it changed my body. And the combination, I was like, oh my God, somebody gets me. And then I went through my first surgery. And this was after being in really, really great shape. And I'll never forget, I was going for my Pilates certification with Vivica. Not even knowing, this is so crazy, that all the women I was training with in person were from all over the place, and they were all professional trainers, and I was the only non-professional. Wow. And I had just gone through iodine radiation, and Vivica was like, you got to bring it down. You got to, and I'd be like, no, I'm like here because I'm going to get certified and da, da, da. And she was like, you don't have to prove anything to me. Like, you're in my classes all the time. I know who you are. And I was like, no, I mean, I'm just figuring out that all these women are professionals. Like, I've got to prove my certification. And needless to say, I got certified. Little did I know within 3 months, I was going to go through my second bout of thyroid cancer. Wow. And little did I know that my body, as you know, going through hip surgery, knee surgery, all the things, being who you become through your empathy, through your perspective, what your body goes through. Wow. While still working, while still restoring, while trying to keep your mindset, and my body going up and down 40 pounds, up and down. Wow. And trying to keep your strength and trying to keep your focus, and working up to 80 hours a week and doing all those things. And I always wanted to get certified in the bar work, and Vivica's studio went through a lot of different changes and moves and all the things. Like, ironically, she ended up doors down for my chiropractor. And that was like, how did this happen? This is amazing. And then when she left that spot and basically became this, studio for just like explorative, just to train trainers around the world, I was like, oh no. And everybody just kind of went away. And I, like you're talking about groups, I would do 3 literally Pilates classes a week. This is not about me selfishly. It's about the mindset and all the things that I love. The bar classes stopped basically. And I was doing 3 reformer classes, 1 one-on-one, 2 in groups. Yeah. And the benefits of Pilates goes back to like literally the mid 2000s when it was a physical therapy program I was in. And the way my body changed was not to be believed, all starting with mat reformer work. And to this day, I still love my instructor, who doesn't even do it anymore and has moved to Oregon with her family and, her young family. But what it did for me and how it restored me and how it took all those things that I was trained in was just such a peaceful experience, hard, but peaceful. And I always had that sense of confidence. And I just always knew that this is the practice for life. So my point to that, sharing this story is, we've talked about health and we've talked about fitness, we've talked about pivoting, and we've talked about all those things. Ironically, during the pandemic, there was a lot of pivots for all of us, trying to figure out and find ourselves and recreate ourselves or add to the story. For me, a little bit of what is I started building an athleisure company. I started this podcast above and beyond what I do in film and television as a professional makeup and hair artist in the industry. And love it because it's allowed me to create these connections with people like yourself, take the connections further than you were just in my chair and maybe I'll see you another time down the road. This to me is like the flower that keeps getting watered. And in this conversation, you and I are discovering more of our organic connection and the why we are hopefully going to continue to grow this relationship, because I frankly have been seeking you. I just didn't know that you were coming to me in this form. And I don't have there's just so much more conversation that's going to take course past this 2-hour podcast. Yeah. But my point is that, the willingness, I keep going back to this, the willingness to remain open is what has allowed the pivot, which has allowed the discovery, which has allowed for both you and I to be examples of growth and how to inspire and empower other people by continuing to be curious, to continue to develop yourself, therefore being able to help others in the process, to help them push through, to help them create confidence, to help them remain healthy, to help them feel loved, to help them raise their spirit, to help them feel amazing. And coming back to Women's History Month, I think as women, because we're nurturers by nature, unless something terrible has happened to us that we cut that off, most of us have that burning inside of us. So for you as a woman, and as a daughter and as a sister and as a child, as a child and a grandchild, what do you from here forward, taking all these things that you've learned and where you're at and how you came through the pandemic? Because by the way, if I told you how many people I know in the world of health and fitness that I begged them to go virtual and they couldn't get past their own navel. So I applaud you again, because it took courage. All of these movements have taken courage. Yeah. That is at the core of all of this story, is courage. The willingness to go forth and to have courage. That goes back to your generations of your family with that land. I mean, I really believe you come from a place of courage. You even have the look of a lioness. You just have that kind of, and it takes being brave. It takes being scared. And it takes still doing it no matter what. And so you, at this juncture, what in your immediate future and your seeing future, I heard what you said about Pilates, but what impact do you want to make in this world, in the next decade and going forward as a legacy for yourself with all that you know up till now in your life?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, first, before I say that, I have to give you a lot of credit, because I did not know your history with thyroid cancer. And that's incredible. I mean, from the mental, the physical, everything that embodies that, and then to keep going and do what you're doing. So let me give you your credit right now, because that's really impressive. I mean, it really is. I give you a lot of credit for that.
Thank you.
The next chapter of life. Yeah, it's so interesting because of, I think I've always had this mindset, but I think because of COVID, things they really do hopefully for most people, they just put things into focus a lot clearer, kind of like what you want out of life. And there's just so much horribleness in the world, especially right now. It kind of just put that into drive. So for me, my goal really is, I like seeing people happy. And I mean that in a very basic sense. I like doing things that make people feel good about themselves. There's no other way to put it. And Pilates allows me to do that. So my dancing is, I'm not going to say it comes from a more selfish place, but it's me. It's my expression outward to the world. I have to put so much more, I have to put all of me into it to get something out of it. Mm-hmm. Whereas with Pilates, it's a whole nother side of my brain. Mm-hmm. It's what do I need to learn to now get out to make this the best possible for you, not just for me, but for you. Do I find joy in doing it? Absolutely. So that is something that keeps me going. But my goal with Pilates is let me learn as much as I can so that when I'm teaching you this class, you leave going, not only have I learned something from the physical aspect, how can I put that into my life? But then it makes you want to come back and then share that with other people too. Yeah. So that's where I'm at with Pilates. And I don't know what that looks like in the grander scheme of things, but it warms my heart when I get these two comments. I feel so much better. Just that one little statement, because I know what that feels like. Yeah. Because of my hip and I have SI joint issues, my back literally hurts every day. So if I'm able to make someone feel better, that's a huge statement for me. Like, if I'm able to make you feel this much better, like that's huge for me. The other part of that is like, someone will tell me like, I was doing this and I was able to just do it. Like, it was just like, it was easier for me to do. Like, I was able to get off the couch and that was easier for me to do. That's huge for me. Like, that's the whole reason why I teach. Like, my purpose of teaching is not for you to be able to do like, you know, this intricate movement. If you can get there, great. Like, my goal though is not that. My goal is to get you moving better and feeling better. And if you're able to translate that into your everyday life, like, I've done my job. So I'm trying to figure out how that works in my career and in the grander scheme of things, and what is going to keep me wanting to do that too. Because there's another part of that, you know, you got to make yourself happy too in order to make other people happy. So I'm in such an early stage in my career right now that I wouldn't say career, my life with Pilates, that like, I'm very open to many things right now. And I'm just kind of sifting through those things to see where I can resonate the best, where I can, you know, what's going to impress on me the most so that I can give back the most. So that's really where I'm at. I'm taking opportunities right now and I'm vetting them and I'm living in them, and I will figure it out and I'll figure it out.
Well, and it's so interesting because you and I are both healers. You are a healer through your Pilates. I am an intuitive healer. People don't know that because I don't really talk about it so much. But I also believe that going back to happiness, ironically, my name meaning happiness, I too like to make people happy.
Oh, yes.
Right? Yeah. And, you know, it's a joy for me ever since I was a little girl to make people look and feel good. And I don't mean on a shallow, surfacey way, because I know what it was like as a little girl to not fit in, to look different than the rest. I mean, I could have been a talented little dancer at 3 and 4 and 5 years old, but I carried a little bit more weight on my body frame. And I wasn't the little blonde girl that were all of my girlfriends in the community I grew up in. And I was always being told that in an indirect sort of way, I wasn't good enough, even though I was smart, talented, all those things. So I had this empathy inside of me from a very young age. And then any other challenges that have come along, surviving domestic violence, going through my parents, very young, my father dying after divorce and losing our businesses, surviving 4 bouts of thyroid cancer, these are just those might sound like heavy and a lot. That's not what it's meant to sound like. I don't even think, like, that's a third person kind of conversation. Like, those things happened. They happened for a reason, not for a reason like I deserve to have it happen. No, they happened because it gives me a sense of, I get you. Yeah. And you can get through this. Yeah. Trust me on this. I promise you, but you got to be willing to do the work. Yeah. And when I see you and I hear you, Kimberly, like, for me, because of your empathy and because of your life experience and because of where you come from and because of what is important to you, clearly you are meant to be a healer on this planet. Like, that's what I see. You are meant to be a healer. You're meant to take all those things that you have to give, whether it is through performing, through helping, through showing, through widening your horizon of knowledge and spreading it around the world. I also think you said something very important, which for many do not want to be faced with this stuff. But if you ever spend time with people of an older generation who gave so much to the planet, gave so much to society, gave so much to their families and their foundations and their legacies, to turn around and to be limited in their bodies. Yeah. And lose their freedom. And therefore it affects their mind, body, and spirit. To be able to be a source of keeping people free, to just get in and out of bed or off the couch or in and out of a car and not be strapped to a cane, a walker, or whatever. Let me tell you something. There are generations of people who deserve not to be dismissed. Mm-hmm. And somehow, I was having this conversation earlier today with a couple who are talking about getting involved with politics. And my point to it was, I was talking about how there's different ages that we as a society become very dismissive of one another. And, it's one thing to be in your 20s, you're still wet behind the ears. So as they say, right?
You barely live. Like you
can barely function. You're either being funded by your parents to get off the ground, you're getting married, you're getting probably pregnant too young, you're figuring out what your purpose is, and you can barely like rub two sticks together. And if in fact you're fortunate enough to be in tech or something that where you're making multi 6-7 figures, trust me, you still don't have life figured out. That's just one thing that's working right now, not the rest of it, just that little nugget. So let's not kid ourselves, because if you can show up with the full package in the written book, now I want to sit down with you, which you really, whether you realize it or not, have really written many chapters of this book already. So now it's just like filling in the pages and adding more. And now you're going to bind it more in leather versus just paperback. And, you're going to just keep refining and refining and finding your voice in this process and helping a lot of people. I really do believe this. And because I think you're more selfless than you're selfish. That's also what resonates with me. And being, by the way, selfish is healthy in a non-narcissistic way. And that's very, very, very important to fuel yourself in order to give others. So I know in your path, you have to keep doing that for yourself so you don't feel depleted. And abundance in not just giving, but in monetary ways is also very important, because it gives you freedom to leverage yourself, to be looked upon in an expert sort of way, to be sought out in ways that you deserve to be sought out, because you have so much to offer people. And that is a gift. And that's not a gift that everybody has. Look at there, you and I both know there's tons of people who are trained in the Pilates world, tons of people trained in the dance world, tons of people who have been injured, but they don't have the gift of pulling back and being able to see what gift that they can give unselfishly while also feeling fulfilled. So that's just from my perspective, what a beautiful soul you are, what a great gift you are, how this collective part of these, this time on the planet so far, in this form that sits before me called yourself, Kimberly Padgett, that, Kimberly Jones Padgett, it's just like, really who, I feel so blessed to have met you because you speak my language.
Yeah, me as well. That's a mutual feeling for sure. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, and I think that given the opportunity to hear this story or stories will allow other people to go, gosh, what can I do? How can I take what I'm doing and refine that and help others and benefit from it, not only myself, but the many other people. And I just have so many friends that I want to see this, and in communities to see this, because it is a story of not only resilience and a story of success, but it's a story of the willingness to go through the pivots, to keep redefining, and to see what your strengths are that can be beneficial to so many outside of yourself. That again goes back to, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think that's key. I think the hardest part are the pivots. I don't think a lot of people can, I don't know, I can attest to this, but I look at my life and I can literally pinpoint the days of pivots. Mm-hmm. Like for some reason, life threw at me very this or that moment. Mm-hmm. It was like, you choose this or that. It wasn't like there are some organic, there's the in-betweens that kind of led me to one place or the other. But the major things that have gone on in life that have led me to where I am right now, and even physically in Los Angeles, have been very this or that. There's no gray. You either choose this path or you choose that path. So it's funny. The only thing that was organic that I'm thinking about right now that it wasn't a this or that was getting married. I didn't have to get that wasn't it wasn't something life threw at me. It was you have to do this or that. That was one of those decisions that it was that was all mine. You know what I'm saying? That morphed into something that needed to be there, and that just took over. So it's kind of one of those
things. You said you called it within 2 weeks of meeting him. And so it's no matter
no matter what rocky parts of that were, because any relationship you're going to have the ups and downs. But I was saying this to someone else the other day. I'm no matter where that bottom drops out and how low it gets, and I don't think I can return from because I've been there, I'm able to attach myself to points of that go, oh, this is why I'm doing this. And I think that's just so important, because I don't know if everyone thinks in that capacity. And, when you're in that darkness, especially in a relationship, it's very easy, especially in this day and age, to go I just don't want to do this anymore. And obviously there are extenuating circumstances,
of course,
that go beyond that.
Oh, way beyond that,
obviously. Way beyond. But in my case, I could have walked away several times and been can't do this anymore. So, I mean, my main point of what I'm saying is like, and anything that you're doing, if you want it enough, you attach yourself to that part of it that goes, oh, this is why I'm still doing this.
Yeah.
Because that's really powerful, and it's hard to clear your mind enough sometimes in the moment to do that. But I think if you can, it just brings you some clarity, and it brings you back to a place that's like, okay, this is why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
So
no,
if anyone can take from that.
No, and it's absolutely true. Again, we said this early on, everything is figure outable. And also, it's really interesting. Many people do bail on their relationships for all sorts of reasons that are not life-threatening. And just because they're not willing to do the work, well, guess what? If not this relationship, and I'm not saying every relationship is meant to stay together for 20, 30, 40, 50 years or whatever. No, I'm not here to judge that.
Neither.
But I do believe that there is no such thing as the white horse coming in, and it's a princess experience.
There might be moments like that. There might be moments like that.
Yeah.
But and there should be moments like that. I hope for everyone there's moments like that. But that is not a real relationship. And I think a lot of people do get caught up in that. And going beyond like a person to person relationship, this carries on in any relationship, a business. You need to be able to connect with what you're doing and fight for it. Because if you can't, it won't survive. And that goes for many things. This is not just about, a romantic or that type of relationship. This goes beyond that into other life relationships. So
absolutely true. And you do need to know when to, so not every relationship, even if you've been in it, is meant to continue or meant to be where you're working side by side, especially if people aren't capable of communicating or having honest conversations because they don't like to have confrontation, and they'd rather just not be that person, that humankind person. And that's when you've got to know your value. You've got to know your self-worth. And it's not about an economic self-worth I'm talking about a soul self-worth, that you choose to no longer be treated this way. You choose to no longer accept that in your life. You choose a greater experience of good, healthy life, affirming, raising people up kind of tribe, versus those that don't care about the fallout of their lack thereof. That's very real. And that is true either in an intimate relationship or a working relationship, or like you said, any relationship. That we are here to be a value. If we can't be a value in the sense of we can't value one another and appreciate one another, what in God's name are we doing here?
Absolutely. Yeah.
This is our greatest bank account, our exchange. This is our sourcing. This is energy exchanging with energy. That's all we've got. At the end of the day, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. This is all we've got. This is the gift. You either embrace it or not. And I too have come to this point in my life where it's like, I have to know that it's okay to exit gently and gracefully, even if I want to have the conversation of the why. If they're not capable of having that conversation, it's not my job to dig it out and be the anthropological lead on this dig. No, because I want people who are fully developed to mirror me, to embrace me as I embrace them by nature, and with love and with kindness. And it's not easy, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
And I think we as women, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I think we as women have to lead that path with each other, because we as women are not always taught that, to survive, to surround ourselves with loving, nurturing women. Women can actually, I don't even want to go down that road, but we as women need to make a commitment to actually really surround ourselves with really integral, non-toxic, loving spirited, want to celebrate you, want to see you succeed in all aspects of your life with no agenda, but just from a mere loving space.
Yeah. And I think that that's actually not the norm, which isn't great, but unfortunately, I don't think that's the norm. I will say that as I've gotten older, I've learned to navigate where to find that though. And I think it takes brain power to do that. It takes give and take, trust, but like knowing your surroundings. But I do think it's obtainable, but it's definitely, it is a tricky road. Because you do have to put yourself out there, but understand that, not everyone's going to be on the same thinking plane as you. So, but no, I don't think we're taught that from a young age. If you were, you should feel very fortunate, because I don't think that's the norm. It was not my norm. It really wasn't until in my 30s that I really realized that, and not from like a selfish way, like not in a way that like I didn't want it. It's just that I had never been around that. I didn't realize what creating that kind of space really felt like. And when I started doing that, though, things really started changing for me in the best and most positive ways. So I just think that it's more one of those things you have to be cognizant of and realize, like, is that what the goal you're trying to obtain? Because is this something you've even thought about? Because again, when you're not brought up with that, it's not until you maybe have a conversation like this, or you're listening to a podcast, or, I just think that expanding the brain in general, everyone could do a little bit more of, and then you start to find those niches and those places where you can find that. But it really takes opening your eyes first and then opening your brain so that you can get to that kind of a place.
Well, I do think one of the most important things that we as a society have to do is continue self-development. It doesn't stop at age 12 or grade 12 or advanced education. Self-development is like something that should be completely spoken about at all times.
I mean, it should be innate. It should be innate. It should be innate. And it's not. And I think it's the society that we live in that it's not. But I actually think by human nature, we're curious. Yeah. We are typically curious about stuff. But I think because of the society that we live in, our curiosity is not, focused on the things that are bettering. It's actually doing the opposite. So I think it takes brain space to go, let me get to a place where like my curiosity is taking me into a place that's making me a better person and expanding, and as opposed to narrowing in on, I think just this. And that's hard. I mean, that's not easy, especially in the world we live in today. It's not easy, but it is easy if you open your brain, because on the flip side of that, you have Instagram where you can literally just find whatever you want. You have Facebook where you have the internet. So like, if you open your brain up to that, it actually becomes super easy, almost overwhelmingly easy. Yeah. But it's that pivot that you're talking about that you have to take in your brain to go, do I want to do that? You have to take that time to go, is this something I want to do? Once you answer that question, yes, it becomes exponentially easy. But if you're not there, it's very easy to go in the opposite direction too. So, well, I think you're talking about consciousness, and consciousness makes a choice on how am I going to make a positive contribution in the world. And it starts with ourselves, and ourselves doing good unto ourselves so we can do good unto others. And you either are going to give gold to the world, or you're going to give toxic waste. Mm-hmm. It's kind of black and white. And I mean that because if we're going through life making a conscious choice not to self-develop, and we're walking through life damaged,
you're only going to impose your damage onto others. If in turn, and there's nothing wrong with being damaged. That's life. Life is can be heart aching.
That's life.
That's life.
I've been there, and I will be there again. You know, that's not linear. That's going to happen. But you have to recognize, it's recognizing that though. That's right. I think that's the part that gets people, is not being able to recognize. If you're in that state, take the grace, do what you need to do. But I think maybe people maybe they don't recognize that. They don't.
I sadly think that there's plenty of people who have, I mean, I can only speak from my professional career, where I see plenty of people being given really powerful opportunities, but because of who they show up being, don't realize the cause and effect that they leave upon others. And my heart goes out to them.
Yeah.
But my heart goes out to all the people that get hurt in the process. This is when we're full grown adults, so to speak. This is not a time to be arrested in your development. This is a time to, like, if you're raising children on top of it, this is a time to be responsible.
Yeah. And
take a position of, I need to be responsible so I don't harm anybody. I help people.
Yeah, I mean, that's a powerful statement, because like, I have been married for 11 years and no, I don't have kids yet. Do I want kids? Absolutely. If somebody, I don't mind talking about that. It's fine. It's not trauma to me, so I don't mind talking about it. Do I want kids? Yes, but I had not found myself enough to be able to have kids. I did not feel comfortable raising a child yet, knowing that there was so much more to me that I needed to find. And that's a scary feeling, especially for a woman, because we do have somewhat of a time clock on us. I hate to say it, but like, it exists. I mean, that's just nature. I mean, there's nothing you can do about that. Are there other ways of going about having kids and things like that? Absolutely. But there still is that, as a female, if you do like want to carry and things like that, there's a time clock on us. There is. And it becomes scary when you start approaching that age and going, I haven't quite, not that you're going to figure it all out, but for me, there was huge chunks that I knew were missing and I did not know what they were, but I needed more out of myself before I could bring a child up to this planet, because I was not ready to, how am I going to instill on them when I don't even know what is going on myself yet? So I will say I'm definitely in a place now where I feel like I have kind of filled in a lot of those, not all of them, but I filled in a lot of the missing blanks. And I know I feel confident in myself more as a human, that is, you know, I think I'm ready maybe to move on to the next phase. But it's scary. It's very scary, because if you're a thinker in that way, you know, that saying of like, there's no good time to have kids, you just have them. I'm like, I don't know about that. Like, and I think there's arguments to both sides of that. That's a whole nother conversation.
Oh, we will have that conversation.
I think that is a conversation that actually has to happen though. And that conversation maybe doesn't happen because of that.
I'm here to have that conversation. We won't have that. We won't get into, that's a whole nother 2 hours.
That's a whole nother campfire.
Yeah. A whole nother campfire that I'm willing to have with you.
It's an important topic because everybody comes at it from a different angle and no one is wrong. Yeah. But everyone needs to listen. That's correct. No one's wrong, but we all need to listen.
And it's really women on women that need to listen more than anything, because I mean, that is a whole can of worms that I've gone through experiences with that definitely I'm not going to finish today's talk about, but we will open up. We will absolutely open that up, because this is where I think women really have to like find the depth of within that, the nurturing versus the judging, the competition. Having children is not a competition. Having children is a gift and a miracle, however that happens.
Yeah.
If that's meant to happen, great. If it's not meant to happen, that doesn't mean that you're less than or whatever.
Oh, that's great too.
That's your life path.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's a great segue into the next chat. I think that's
100% our next segue into our next chat. I'm so super excited. I cannot thank you enough for taking this time with me. You are so delicious. You are so rich and just joyful to be with. Honest to God, we're over 2 hours, and it's just
I know, right? I looked
going.
at the time. I was like,
no, I could totally keep going. I'll speak for myself. I'll be selfish and I'll speak for myself and say I can keep going. So I just want to thank you so much, because I think that this conversation is going to be one of those conversations people are really going to want to listen in on, because it's so colorful. There's so much to hear. You are just an absolute delight. I am so fortunate you came into my life. I'm so grateful and thankful that you said yes to me. I mean, I don't think we've known each other a week. That's true.
I think it's like just like I think we celebrated our 1 week anniversary today.
Well, it couldn't be more joyous.
Happy 1 week anniversary.
Happy 1 week anniversary. I adore you. Thank you so much. What a blessing.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Honestly, like I've just started dipping into the pool of doing like live chats and things like this, and I love it. So I'm happy to come back at any time, and thank you for having me. I mean, again, that was a choice you made, and you chose to have me on. So
I look forward to our next conversation. I truly do. So mwah to you. Have a lovely evening. Thank you so much. Was that not an incredible conversation? It just goes to show you how being open to the possibilities and creating connections can make an amazing opportunity for you to discover something about other people as well as yourself, and find the common things that you have together. I am so happy that Kimberly Padgett and I had an opportunity to connect, and will continue to connect in life. And I look forward to you joining me next week as I sit down with my 86-year-old mother-in-law, Jacqueline Townsell, who will share with me an amazing life story of what it was like for her to grow up as a Black female. Imagine 86 years in the United States and Europe. Just come and join me. You are not going to believe it. Talk about a woman with strength, power, intuition, guidance, perseverance, joy, love, real understanding of what's important in life. This is Women's History Month. Come celebrate with me around the campfire at Camp Fifi Uncensored. Can't wait for you to join me next week. Bye for now.